Millionaire CEO accidentally enters his secretary's office. That moment changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. It all began on a gray Monday morning in downtown New York. The elevator doors slid open on the top floor of Parker & Co., one of the city's most powerful tech firms. The air was crisp with the smell of coffee and printer ink. The hum of keyboards echoing down the long glass hallway. Liam Parker, the company's 34-year-old CEO, strode toward his office, phone pressed to his ear. His schedule was packed. His voice sharp with control, every second counted. He turned a corner, distracted by the call from his European investors. Yes, move the meeting up to noon, he said, pushing a door open without looking. The next few seconds felt like slow motion. Inside the room stood a young woman, mid-20s. Slender frame, auburn hair falling loose over her shoulders. She froze mid-motion, halfway through changing from her rain-soaked cardigan into a clean blouse. For a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. The soft thud of the door closing behind him broke the silence. "Oh my God," she gasped, clutching the blouse to her chest. Liam blinked, realizing too late he was not in his own office. His gaze darted to the nameplate on the desk. Emily Tran, executive assistant. "I am so sorry," he stammered, stepping back, the shock stealing his usual composure. "I thought this was your office." She cut in, her cheeks flaming red. "Clearly not." Liam turned away immediately, pushing the door open again, muttering a quick, "My apologies, Miss Tran." The hallway swallowed him in silence. He felt his pulse racing. Of all the mistakes he could make, walking in on his new secretary was not on the list. Emily stood there, still trembling, her mind spinning between embarrassment and fear. She had only started 2 weeks ago. Her last job had ended abruptly after the company downsized, and this was her one chance to rebuild her life in the city. "Great," she whispered to herself. First impression, total disaster. Across the hallway, Liam leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. He was known for his precision. He never mixed up meetings, never misspoke, never lost focus. Yet somehow, one wrong door had shattered that image. And what unsettled him even more was the fleeting look in her eyes' shock. Yes, but also something deeply human, something he had not seen in years. Back in her small office, Emily buttoned her blouse with shaky hands, muttering, "He probably thinks I am careless." But part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. It was not every day the billionaire CEO of the company barged into your office by mistake. Outside, Liam straightened his tie and forced his mind back to business. But the image of that startled, honest face refused to fade. For the rest of the morning, every time he looked at the door to his office, he caught himself glancing toward hers across the hall. He had walked through the wrong door, but something about that mistake felt strangely right. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the glass walls of Parker & Co., painting the marble floor with soft gold. The office was already alive with the hum of printers, the chatter of phones, and the rhythmic clacking of keyboards. Emily Tran kept her eyes glued to her computer screen, determined to stay invisible. Every time footsteps passed her door, her shoulders tensed, half expecting the CEO to appear again. She replayed yesterday's scene over and over, wishing she could erase it. It was just a mistake, she whispered, trying to convince herself. A simple misunderstanding, but embarrassment burned all the same. Her mother used to say, "Keep your head down and work hard. That is how people notice you for the right reasons." So that was what Emily planned to do: work, not talk, and definitely avoid any more awkward encounters with Liam Parker. Inside his office, across the hall, Liam stared at the city skyline, coffee untouched. His mind was not on the quarterly numbers or the investor reports stacked on his desk. It was on her, the young assistant with the startled eyes. He could not understand why the memory lingered. He had met hundreds of employees before, yet something about her seemed different. She had looked genuinely scared, not of him, but of losing the little ground she had just gained in this demanding city. When his assistant Claire stepped in with the day's schedule, Liam cleared his throat. "Is Miss Tran still working in the East Wing?" Claire blinked. "Yes, sir. Do you want me to reassign her?" He shook his head quickly. "No. It is fine." But inside, he felt oddly unsettled. By noon, the company cafeteria buzzed with chatter. Emily sat in the corner with a small salad, flipping through her notebook, a worn leather journal where she scribbled ideas to make office systems more efficient. It was a quiet habit, one she never shared with anyone. She wrote because it made her feel capable, even when her title said otherwise. Then, a shadow fell across her table. She looked up and froze. It was him. "Mind if I join you?" Liam asked. His tone polite but warm. Emily nearly dropped her fork. "Oh, Mr. Parker, of course, please." He placed his tray down, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. "About yesterday," he began. "I want to apologize again. It was careless of me." Emily forced a small smile. "No harm done, Adsher. I just was not expecting company." Liam chuckled softly, a rare sound that seemed to lighten the air. "Neither was I. But it reminded me that even CEOs can walk through the wrong door sometimes." For the first time, Emily laughed quietly, but real. "That makes two of us learning humility this week." He tilted his head, studying her. "You have been here 2 weeks, right? How are you settling in?" She hesitated. "It is busy, but I like it. Everyone is kind. Well, mostly everyone." Her tone teased gently, and Liam smiled in return. When he left the table, Emily let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her heart was still racing, but not from fear anymore. Something had shifted, a strange sense of comfort, like the first bit of sunlight after a storm. Back in his office, Liam found himself smiling faintly as he reviewed her file. Born in California, graduated top of her class, transferred from a smaller branch last quarter. Nothing extraordinary on paper, yet he could not shake the thought that there was more to her story. Across the hall, Emily returned to her desk. For the first time since the accident with the door, she felt her shoulders relax. Maybe this city was not as cold as it seemed. Maybe people could make mistakes and still start over. Neither of them knew that a simple conversation in the cafeteria had just opened another door, one neither of them planned to walk through, but one that would soon change everything. That Friday evening, the office lights dimmed one by one as employees packed up for the weekend. Only a few desks still glowed under the soft white lamps. Emily Tran sat at hers, typing carefully, her screen filled with spreadsheets and project notes. Everyone else had left hours ago, but she needed to finish the quarterly report before Monday. It was her chance to prove that she was more than the new girl who made an awkward first impression. Across the hall, Liam Parker was still in his office. Most CEOs would have gone home long ago, but Liam preferred the silence after hours. It was the only time his mind slowed down enough to think clearly. He stood by the window, looking out at the city lights that stretched like a river of stars below. His reflection in the glass looked tired, expensive suit, neat tie, but eyes that held something restless. He turned away and noticed a faint glow from the office opposite his. Emily was still there, shoulders bent in concentration. Without really thinking, he picked up his coffee mug and walked across the hall. He knocked lightly. "Still here?" Emily looked up, startled but smiling. "Yes, just trying to make sure this report does not crash the system again. I think the data file is corrupted." Liam stepped closer to her desk. "May I take a look?" She hesitated. "I think I have it under control." "It's there." He smiled. "Then let us see if we both do." For the next few minutes, they stood side by side, trying to fix the formatting errors. The office was quiet except for the soft tapping of keys and the hum of the air conditioner. At one point, Emily reached for her notebook, the same worn leather one she always kept close. Liam noticed the handwritten sketches inside charts, diagrams, even a few creative concepts for new workflow software. "You designed these?" he asked, genuinely curious. Her face turned pink. "They are just ideas, things I sketch when I need to think." He turned a page, careful not to make her uncomfortable. "These are impressive. You should show them to the systems team." She shook her head quickly. "It is not my place. I am just an assistant." Liam closed the notebook gently and met her eyes. Sometimes the best ideas come from the quietest desks. The words hung in the air longer than either expected. Emily felt her chest tighten with something that was not fear. This time it was recognition. Maybe hope. Liam smiled faintly, then cleared his throat and stepped back. You have a good eye for structure. If you ever want to discuss those ideas, I door well. The right one is open. Emily laughed softly, and for the first time since her first day. It sounded easy. After he left, she opened her notebook again, staring at the messy sketches that suddenly looked like possibilities instead of dreams. Later that night, as she walked home through the cool spring air, she replayed his words in her head. The quietest desks. She whispered them under her breath, smiling. Maybe her work mattered more than she thought. Meanwhile, in his penthouse apartment overlooking the Hudson, Liam placed his phone on the counter and poured himself a glass of water. The city buzzed below, but his thoughts stayed on the young woman across the hall. There was something about her drive, her quiet focus, that reminded him of the version of himself before the money and the boardrooms, when success still felt like possibility, not obligation. As he set his glass down, he caught his reflection again and smiled faintly. One wrong door, he murmured to himself. Maybe not such a mistake after all. Down in the city, Emily switched off her bedside lamp, her notebook resting on the table beside her. On its open page, one sketch stood out, a small flowchart labeled "Better Ways to Work." Beneath it, in smaller handwriting, she had added a note. Remember what he said. Monday morning came fast. The elevator doors opened to the top floor of Parker & Co., and Emily stepped out holding 2 coffees, one for herself and one for Claire, the senior assistant who had been kind to her since the first week. The office buzzed louder than usual. A big client presentation was scheduled for the afternoon, and everyone moved quickly, carrying tablets, files, and nerves. Emily placed the coffee on Claire's desk. Here, you looked like you needed it. Claire smiled, exhausted but grateful. You are a saint? By the way, Mr. Parker asked for the finance report by noon. He said you were the one who fixed the system crash last week. Emily blinked. Is he noticed? Claire raised an eyebrow. Oh, he noticed. Trust me. A wave of warmth spread through Emily's chest, but she quickly pushed it aside. She told herself that attention from the CEO meant responsibility, nothing else. Till, when she walked into his office later with the finished report, she felt her pulse race the same way it had the first day she met him. Liam looked up from his computer. Miss Tran. Perfect timing. He gestured to the screen. I have been reviewing your notes on the internal workflow. I see potential. Would you mind joining the project team this week? I could use someone who understands the details. Her eyes widened. Me. Sir, I am just a person who solves problems, he said, interrupting her gently. Titles can wait. That was how it began. For the next few days, Emily found herself working directly with Liam and a small team of analysts. Meetings turned into brainstorming sessions. She spoke carefully at first, but when Liam asked for her opinion, she realized he genuinely listened. He challenged ideas but never dismissed them, especially hers. One evening, after most of the team had left, they were still in the conference room, going through the final proposal slides. Emily leaned over the table, adjusting the layout on her laptop. If we streamline the report interface like this, the field team can cut down 40% of processing time. Liam studied the screen, impressed. 40%. That is a bold prediction. It is an estimate, she said, smiling nervously. But if I am wrong, I owe you coffee for a month. He chuckled softly. Then I hope you are wrong. They both laughed. And for a moment, the pressure in the room melted away. The sound of their laughter echoed lightly against the glass walls before fading back into the quiet hum of the city outside. Later that night, after Emily left, Liam lingered in the conference room. He looked at her notes spread across the table, detailed, precisa, full of color-coded tabs. In the corner of one page, she had doodled a small sunflower beside the words, "Make it better." He found himself smiling at the simple phrase. There was something contagious about her hopefulness. The next morning, Emily arrived early. On her desk lay a small folded note in clean handwriting. Excellent work. Yesterday. Keep going. L. P. She stared at it for a long moment, unsure whether to smile or panic. Nobody in the office had ever received a handwritten message from the CEO before. She tucked it carefully inside her notebook. At lunch, Claire teased her. You know, for someone who claims not to notice anyone, Mr. Parker seems to notice you a lot lately. Emily flushed. It is nothing like that. He is just encouraging. Claire grinned. Right, encouraging. That afternoon, the project presentation went perfectly. When the final slide faded, the room broke into applause. Liam glanced at Emily and gave a small nod, the kind that said more than words. She smiled back, quietly proud. As the team left the room, Emily lingered for a moment. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the polished conference glass, the same woman who had once wished to stay invisible. Now, her name was whispered in meetings. For the first time since she came to New York, she felt like she belonged. Across the room, Liam watched her close her laptop, unaware that something in his life was beginning to shift too. The following week unfolded like a blur of meetings, presentations, and late nights. But somewhere in the rush of deadlines, Liam Parker and Emily Tran began to find a rhythm that felt effortless. It was no longer just a boss and his assistant working through spreadsheets. It was a quiet partnership built on trust. Every morning, Emily brought coffee before Liam's first call, and every evening, he walked past her office to make sure she got home safely. Neither of them said anything about it. They did not need to. One evening, the rain poured heavily over Manhattan, drumming against the tall windows of Parker & Co. The office was nearly empty. Emily stayed behind to finish compiling post-project data. She rubbed her tired eyes and took another sip of coffee that had long gone cold. When the elevator dinged, she turned her head, surprised. Liam stepped out, still in his dark suit, holding an umbrella slick with rain. "You are still here?" he asked, his tone soft. "So are you," she replied, smiling faintly. He set the umbrella aside. "You should not walk home in this weather. Let me drive you." "Oh, no. I am fine," she said quickly. "The subway." "Emily," he interrupted gently. "It is pouring." Something in his voice made it impossible to refuse. She nodded. "All right, just let me pack up." Minutes later, they were in his car. City lights blurring through the rain-streaked windshield. The silence was comfortable, filled only by the low hum of the engine and the rhythmic beat of the rain. As they stopped at a red light, Emily glanced out at the glowing skyline. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked quietly. Liam looked over. "Of what?" "All of this. The meetings, the pressure, the constant noise." He smiled faintly. "Every day. But then someone reminds me why I started." She turned to him. "Who?" He paused, then said softly, "People like you." Her breath caught. She wanted to say something, but the light turned green, and the moment passed. When they arrived at her apartment building, the rain had softened into a drizzle. Liam parked by the curb. She turned to thank him, but before she could speak, he held out a small flash drive. "What is this?" she asked. "Your design notes," he said. "I uploaded them into the prototype system. I want you to present them at next week's innovation review." Her eyes widened. "Wait me. Present. You earned it," he said simply. She hesitated, overwhelmed. "I do not know what to say." "Say yes," he replied. "The rest will follow." Emily took the drive carefully, her fingers brushing against his. A spark, small but undeniable, passed between them. She looked down quickly. "Thank you, Mr. Parker." "Liam," he corrected quietly. "You can call me Liam." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she smiled, soft and sincere. "Good night." "Liam." He watched her run toward the lobby, her figure small against the curtain of rain. When she disappeared inside, he leaned back in his seat, exhaling a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Back upstairs in her apartment, Emily placed the flash drive beside her laptop. She sat by the window, watching the city glitter below. It still amazed her how far she had come from nearly invisible to being trusted with something that mattered. Across town, Liam poured himself a glass of whiskey in his penthouse, staring out at the same rain. For years, his world had been made of numbers, contracts, and long, cold silences. But now, he found himself waiting for Monday, not for business, but to see her walk through the door again. Both of them went to sleep that night, unaware that what had begun as a mistake had already crossed into something. Neither could control something that felt dangerously close to love. The morning of the innovation review arrived with nervous energy buzzing through the entire building. For Emily Tran, it felt like the biggest day of her life. She stood in front of the mirror in the restroom, smoothing her blazer, whispering to herself, "You belong here. You earned this." The small flash drive that Liam Parker had given her was tucked safely inside her pocket. When she entered the conference hall, her heart raced. Rows of executives and investors filled the seats. On the large screen behind the podium glowed the title, System Optimization Model by Emily Tran. For a moment, her breath caught. Seeing her name up there felt unreal. Liam sat near the front, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp with quiet pride. He gave her a small nod as if to say, "You have got this." She took a deep breath and began. Her voice trembled on the first few lines, but as she explained the process and data results, confidence began to replace fear. She spoke about efficiency, innovation, and how small changes could create massive results when driven by purpose. By the end, the room had fallen silent, not from boredom, but from attention. When she clicked to the final slide, Liam led the applause. The rest of the room followed, echoing with approval. For the first time in her career, Emily felt truly seen. After the meeting, Liam approached her near the stage. "You did great," he said simply. She smiled, still catching her breath. "I thought I was going to faint halfway through." He laughed softly. "If you did, I would have carried you out myself." Her cheeks flushed. "Let us not make that part of the presentation next time." Before they could say more, one of the board members, Mr. Whitman, approached them. "Excellent work, Miss Tran," he said, shaking her hand. "Mr. Parker, I must say, this was an unexpected choice, but clearly the right one." His tone was polite, but his eyes carried curiosity, even suspicion. "You seem to have taken quite an interest in your assistant's ideas." Liam's jaw tightened, but he smiled. "I take interest in talent, wherever it appears." Whitman nodded slowly. "Of course. Still, I cannot wait to see how the press interprets it." With that, he walked away. Emily looked down, uncomfortable. "Did I do something wrong?" "Not at all," Liam said firmly. "You just did something exceptional, and people like Whitman do not know how to handle that." But as the day went on, whispers began to circle the office. Some said she had received special treatment. Others hinted that her rise was too sudden to be innocent. By late afternoon, even the junior staff were exchanging knowing glances. Emily tried to ignore it, burying herself in work. But when she overheard two analysts whisper, "She is the CEO's favorite now," something inside her cracked. She packed her things quietly and went home early, unable to bear the stares. That evening, Liam found her desk empty. He hesitated before calling her, but she did not pick up. The silence on the other end felt heavier than any rejection he had ever faced. Meanwhile, Emily sat on her couch, staring at her phone. Part of her wanted to call him, to ask if the rumors were true, if he had really chosen her because of more than her work. But another part feared the answer. In his penthouse, Liam stood by the window, frustration simmering beneath the surface. He had only wanted to help her shine, to give her the chance she deserved. Yet somehow, it had turned into a storm of doubt. Both of them spent that night restless, staring at the same city lights from different windows. What had started as a moment of kindness had become something tangled and complicated, something neither of them could explain to the world, or even to themselves. And while the city slept, the distance between them began to grow, quiet and unseen, like the space between one heartbeat and the next. By the next morning, the rumor had spread through every floor of Parker & Co. like wildfire. What had once been admiration for Emily Tran had turned into whispers and side glances. She felt it the moment she stepped off the elevator, the sudden quiet, the way conversations paused when she walked by. She kept her head down, clutching her notebook close to her chest. Inside, her heart pounded. "Do not cry at work," she told herself. "You earned this. You did nothing wrong." But no matter how tightly she tried to hold herself together, the weight of the gossip pressed harder with every passing hour. In the afternoon, while reviewing files in the break room, she overheard two employees speaking near the coffee machine. She must have done something to get that presentation, one whispered. The CEO never promotes anyone that fast. I heard she stayed late with him every night. The other replied, You connect the dots. Emily froze. Her throat tightened. The mug in her hands trembled before she set it down quietly. Without a word, she turned and walked out. Across the hall, Liam Parker sat in his office, unaware of what was happening, until Claire, his senior assistant, knocked on the door. Sir, I think you should know, she said hesitantly. People are talking about you and Miss Tran. Liam's eyes narrowed. Talking how? Suggesting things. Unfair things. Claire sighed. You know how it goes when someone rises too fast. They will not blame their own mediocrity, they will blame her or you. Liam leaned back, his jaw tense. This has gone too far. He stood up. Where is she now? Claire hesitated. She left about 10 minutes ago. She looked upset. Liam grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. Meanwhile, Emily sat in the park across from the building. On a bench slick with cold autumn air, the city blurred around her cars. Braces! The smell of roasted nuts from a street cart all distant. Her eyes stung as she flipped open her notebook. On the inside cover, she saw Liam's short note from weeks ago. Excellent work. Keep going. The words that had once made her proud now felt like a knife twisting inside her chest. She jumped slightly when a shadow fell across the bench. Liam stood there, raincoat draped over his arm, his expression unreadable. Emily, he said softly. She wiped her eyes quickly. Mr. Parker, I am sorry. I did not mean to. Stop apologizing, he said firmly. Writing free sitting beside her. You did nothing wrong. You were brilliant. The people who cannot handle that are the ones who should be ashamed. Her voice cracked. They think I got here because of you. They think something happened between us. Liam looked straight ahead, his hands clasped. Let them think what they want. I know the truth. And so do you. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of traffic and the faint rustle of leaves. Finally, Emily whispered, Maybe it would be easier if I resigned. His head snapped toward her. No. I will not let you throw away everything you have built because of small minds. Her eyes filled again. You do not understand. Every look, every whisper, it is suffocating. Liam exhaled, his voice lower now. I understand more than you think. I built this company by walking through rooms full of people who doubted me. But I never let them define me. She turned to him, her face soft with exhaustion. Then tell me, Liam, what am I supposed to do now? He looked at her, his eyes steady. Keep standing, and if you cannot, I will stand beside you. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she gave a small, broken laugh. You make it sound easy. He smiled faintly. It never is. But it is worth it. When Emily finally stood to leave, Liam watched her walk toward the streetlights, her figure framed by the glow of the city. He knew this storm would not pass quickly, but something inside him had already shifted. He was no longer just her boss trying to protect her career. He was a man realizing how deeply he cared and how much he was willing to risk to prove it. 2 weeks passed. The whispers faded. But Emily Tran did not return to Parker & Co. Her desk remained empty, her notebook gone, and her name was quietly removed from the internal project roster. She had sent in a brief resignation letter, polite but final, thanking the company for the opportunity. There was no mention of Liam. Liam Parker read the letter 3 times before setting it down. The quiet in his office felt heavier than usual. Meetings came and went. Contracts closed. Profits rose, but none of it mattered. The building, once filled with purpose, now felt hollow. Every time he passed the east wing, he caught himself glancing at the closed door that used to be hers. He tried calling once, then twice. No answer. Eventually, he stopped trying, though her name lingered in his thoughts like a song he could not forget. Then one evening, Claire walked in holding a folder. Sir, you should see this, she said. Inside was an invitation, a local gallery opening downtown. The headline read, The Art of Change. Featuring concept designs by Emily Tran. Liam stared at it, reading the name again as if to make sure it was real. He stood. Clear my schedule for tonight. Hours later, the city lights reflected off rain-soaked streets as Liam's car pulled up to a small art studio tucked between old brick buildings. Inside, the gallery buzzed with quiet admiration. Paintings, sketches, and digital installations lined the walls, each inspired by transformation bridges rebuilt, cities reborn, systems reimagined. And in the center stood Emily, dressed simply in white, her hair pinned back, a soft calm replacing the tension he remembered. She turned and froze when she saw him. For a moment, the crowd disappeared. "Liam," she breathed. He smiled faintly. "I was afraid I would never hear you say my name again." She hesitated, clutching the glass in her hand. "Why are you here?" He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Because this," he gestured around them, "was my fault. You should never have had to walk away from your dream just to protect your name. So I wanted to give it back to you." Her brows knit in confusion. "What do you mean?" He nodded toward the far wall. She turned and saw a golden plaque beneath the centerpiece installation. It read, "Creative Hub Initiative, sponsored by the Parker Foundation." Her designs, the workflow models, and creative sketches she once kept in her notebook had been transformed into a visual project, launched in her honor. Her hand flew to her mouth. "You did this." Liam nodded. "You taught me something. Emily, success means nothing if it silences the people who help you build it. You reminded me that innovation is not born from power, but from courage." Tears filled her eyes. "You did not have to do all this." "I did," he said softly, "because walking through the wrong door was the only thing that ever felt right." For a long moment, neither moved. The world outside hummed quietly beyond the glass. Then Emily whispered, "You know, you cannot fix everything with grand gestures." He smiled. "Maybe not, but I had to try." She looked at him for a long moment, then reached into her bag. She pulled out her old notebook, edges worn, 2 pages bent. "You forgot this," she said, pressing it into his hand. "You once said the best ideas come from the quietest desks. Maybe it is time you listened to your own advice." He chuckled softly, his thumb brushing the familiar cover. "Only if the quiet desk beside mine is not empty anymore." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "We will see." As she turned back toward her guests, Liam stood watching her, the soft glow of the gallery lights reflecting in his eyes. For the first time in months, the noise inside his mind went still. He had lost her once because of pride. Tonight, he realized that true leadership was not about being followed. It was about standing beside the right person and letting them shine. The following spring, the city felt different. The skyline shimmered brighter. The streets seemed softer. And inside the creative hub, laughter echoed through glass corridors filled with light. The once empty space had grown into a center of innovation and art, where young designers and engineers collaborated freely, a living symbol of what courage and integrity could build together. At the far end of the main hall, a large photograph hung above the reception desk. It showed Liam Parker and Emily Tran, standing side by side during the gallery's opening night. Below it, the inscription read, "The best mistakes lead us home." Emily walked through the hallway that morning carrying a tray of coffee cups. Her long hair was tied loosely, her white blouse rolled at the sleeves, confident and calm. When she entered the meeting room, Liam was already there, sleeves rolled up, studying a set of blueprints. She smiled. "You are early." A looked up, returning the smile. "You are late? By 2 minutes?" Which is still late. Their easy teasing filled the room, warm and familiar. It had been 6 months since the night of the exhibition, and much had changed. Emily had returned to the company, not as an assistant, but as the creative director of Parker Foundation projects. The whispers had long died out. What remained was respect, and the quiet understanding between two people who had walked through fire and come out stronger. Liam picked up one of the blueprint pages. "Your design for the community lab is brilliant," he said. "I could not have imagined it better." She sipped her coffee. "You could. You just needed to open the right door this time." He laughed quietly. "I am never living that down, am I? Not a chance." For a moment, silence settled between them. The morning light poured in through the glass walls, catching dust motes that shimmered like stars. Emily glanced at him, her voice soft. "Do you ever think about how everything started?" He met her gaze. "Every day," she smiled. "If you had not walked into the wrong office." He stepped closer, his tone gentle but certain. "I would have found it eventually. Some doors are meant to be opened." their eyes held. The kind of quiet that needed no words. Then Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver key on a delicate chain. "This belongs to the new gallery wing," he said, "but I thought maybe you should be the one to open it." Emily looked down at the key, realizing it was more than a gesture of trust. It was a promise. "Liam," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "It is just a key. Unless you decide otherwise." She took it slowly, her hand brushing his. "Then I guess I am deciding otherwise." Later that afternoon, the staff gathered in the courtyard for the official opening. As Emily unlocked the new door, Liam stood beside her, his hand resting lightly against hers. The sound of the latch clicking open echoed through the atrium like a heartbeat. Applause filled the air. Cameras flashed. But for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, two people who had once collided by accident, now standing together by choice. When the crowd began to disperse, Liam leaned toward her and said quietly, "One wrong door. One right person." Emily looked up at him, eyes glistening. "The best mistake we ever made." As the evening light bathed the glass walls in gold, they stood there, surrounded by everything they had built, not from power, but from patience, honesty, and something that had begun as an apology and grown into love. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the city, their story became what all great stories hope to be, a reminder that even the smallest mistake can open the door to the most beautiful beginning.